Good afternoon, it's Vanessa, and I will be your conference operator today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the Fundraising and Resource Development conference call. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, please press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you'd like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. Thank you. I will now like to turn the call over to Ms. Sharon Rabb. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Welcome to Fundraising Resource Development. I'm Sharon Rabb with Campaign Consultation, and we are a training and technical assistance provider with the Corporation for National and Community Service. This is part of a series of monthly web shops designed to provide tips and assistance to help you navigate your VISTA service and perform the work that you've been assigned to by your organization. Please look to the right on your screen, and you'll see that we are asking you to answer a few questions. These will help us know who is participating in this webinar and direct them to your needs. You may have been assigned the task of fundraising for your organization as part of a team or as a single fundraiser with a special area of responsibility. Truth is, everyone who works for a nonprofit is responsible for the well-being of an organization. Whether you are a grant writer, an events coordinator, or a community liaison, we hope there will be something for you in this webinar. Today, we have myself, Sharon Rabb, and I am a project specialist for campaign consultation. Jill Freeman is an online curriculum developer at Education Northwest, and she will be talking to you about communication tips for communicating with prospects. Dan is a media specialist with campaign consultation, and she's our tech person today. She's sitting in for Suzanne Knizner, so if you have a need to communicate with Danielle, direct your information, your question to Suzanne, and otherwise keep it open for everyone.
Thank you, Sharon. We're going to go over a couple of tips, but first, I see a lot of chat going on, and I just want to do some house cleaning first. If you would like to speak to me personally as the host, and you'd like to have a private conversation, then you would click on privately, and it will just go to me. If you want to chat with everyone, however, and you want to have a conversation back and forth with everyone on the phone, then you're going to click everyone from the drop-down menu. Otherwise, I'm the only person who gets to see what you're saying. A couple other things that we want to give you. I know that some folks are having a problem with the passcode. So if you're on the line and you can hear us, the passcode is 8942114. So, okay, let's go over some tips for using WebEx. If your internet connection, reconnect using the link that was emailed to you. If you lose your phone connection, redial 1-877-297-9359. And once again, the passcode is 8942114. This one is being recorded and will be available on the Vista Campus tour page along with the archives of previous workshops. So the phones right now are going to be muted, and you may ask questions in the chat at the right, and we will try to answer questions, as many of them as we go along. And if time permits, we'll also open the phone lines a little bit later on so you can ask questions there. Again, please make sure that when you're communicating with everyone in the chat that you click that drop-down menu and everyone else can see you. Otherwise, the only person that's going to be able to read it is myself. Thanks so much, and I'm going to turn this back over to Sharon.
Sorry for all the confusion that we have. That passcode, again, if you're not sure, is 8942114. That should get you into the telephone call. Well, for this agenda, for welcome introductions that we have just completed, we will then have a discussion over the differences between fundraising and development. Those two terms are often used interchangeably, but there is a difference. Then about where the money comes from, rather important information to have because you will need that to know where to solicit your funds. A full limit of fundraising methods. There are many different ways that you can raise funds, and we will talk about a number of them. The all-important ask is what you need to have information that you to have before you can go to a prospect and request funds. Time on the Vista campus, and then we will offer you some next steps. There will be time for questions after the ask, and then we have an evaluation. Introduce Andy King. He is a Vista training specialist with Vista, VCS, and he has a few words to say to you.
And good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are. As Sharon said, my name is Andy King, and I work in the Vista training unit. And on behalf of Vista, I want to welcome all of you to this afternoon's session. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for investing in your professional development. We at Vista look at your year of service as one not only where you will provide capacity building for the community, but also it's a year of personal capacity building, developing your own skills and your own professional portfolio. So at the end of your year, you're in a much stronger place than you were when you started. Just like community will be in a stronger place than when you started. And of course, fundraising is a skill that will be useful not only in your Vista service, but in many other settings as well. So that you'll see this as an investment in time. And you've taken time out of your schedule to join us, and I'm going to turn you back over to Sharon and Jill for today's session.
Thank you, Andy. We may have the poll ready. Is the poll ready for revealing at this time so we can find out where people stand?
Yes. It looks like in answer does that assign that very first question we have, hold on one second, assign your responsibility for fundraising and resource development, and an overwhelming majority of you have said yes. Are you building a new fundraising resource development activity or continuing an established one? And many of you said yes, but it looks like we're sort of divided between a new and established, and some of you did not answer that one. So hopefully when we get done, we will be able to have covered all the topics for you that you're going to need.
And your next question, name your project's 3 most promising donor prospects. Of course, will be different for each one of you, but we want you to start paying attention to those donor prospects who will be most likely to provide support for your program, so that you should have your donor prospects ready on the tip of your tongue. Okay, so let's talk fundraising versus development. Funding is a final step that follows a series of activities intended to build relationships. Development activities stimulate a prospective donor's interest in and commitment to your program. Many of these activities are things that you are probably already doing and don't think of them as fundraising. Development is a continuum of effort that results in successful fundraising. Members of your staff can be involved in development. Program staff are usually the most articulate about their projects and can tell the story in a way that is compelling to stimulate a prospective donor's interest. Many donors will expect to receive an ask only from the executive director, so you may be serving as a coach for that director. And others, a leadership volunteer may be the best person to ask for a gift, and you may be serving as support for him or her. That's where the money comes from. If you look closely at the cut your organization raises, you should see that it comes from a number of different sources. Balanced development program with requests from more than one source indicates a healthy fundraising program. Overdependence in one source, such as foundations, is risky because the loss of funding in that area can cause your whole financial support system to crash. This chart, which you will find on the Vista campus, outlines the benefits and challenges to the sources of fundraising. So, start with the big 3. The first one, individuals. Over 80% of the gifts in the U.S. They put base for your annual fund drive for operating support. They will give you to you year after year and often increase their giving as they become more invested in your program. and eventually can lead to a large planned gift. They will start programs based on their emotional connection, and therefore often are the largest source of funding for controversial issues. Now, be aware that they require more time and effort than other sources of funding. It takes several years to bring an individual into your fold, and it takes a good deal of planning and work with fundraising volunteers. There's individual donor prospects among your most promising donor prospects. Foundation funders involve fewer people to solicit. They need grants, and they will often fund startup projects. They can get money, but as a rule, only provide funding for a limited time. 10 to 20% of all funding to nonprofits comes from foundations, and they often require that you demonstrate that you have support from other sources. They also have their schedule, and there's little chance of getting operating or emergency support from a foundation.
Everyone, can you bear with us for a moment? We're going to try to, I know many of you are putting in the chat that you're not able to hear, you're having difficulty, so maybe let's try a couple of things. We'll try to turn the volume up on the headsets over on this side, move the speaker a little bit closer, much closer.
Better?
And for those of you at home, if you would turn up the volume on your speakers, you said you tried that, and that didn't help, so let's see if we can fix this for you. So start talking, and you guys in the chat, let me know if that's any better.
Thank you. All right, I have the volume turned up, and I hope you can hear me now. People think corporations. Oh, sorry, I've not talked about foundations. Funders involve fewer people to solicit. They will see grants, and they will often fund startup projects. They can give money, but as a rule, they provide funding for a limited time. 10% of all giving to nonprofits comes from foundations, and some require that you demonstrate that you have support from other sources. They're on their schedule, and there's little chance of getting operating or emergency support from a foundation. You're doing better, so thank you for letting us know. Talk about corporations. Corporations should be a good source of support, but remember that businesses are in business for their own profit. Only % of the funding comes from business. You have the benefits if your mission is compatible with the business's product. This will seldom fund operating costs, and the gifts usually are not large. Though that corporations can be good sources of in-kind gifts, and this may be a valuable asset for you. Now you hear us squeaking now. I'll try putting you on a different line. Just hold for a minute. Go anywhere.
And we're getting situated over here, and we apologize for some of the technical problems we're having. I just want to remind everyone, especially the people that came on a little bit later, if you want to speak to the host privately, that's fine. But some of you have some great points and some great questions here, and it's actually meant for everyone. So in the drop-down menu in the chat, you'll see a little section that says Send To, and just click on everyone, and then everyone will be able to see that. And in answer to a couple of the questions, yes, this presentation will be available later on the Vista Campus, and yes, that is vistacampus.org.
Another way to communicate, and hoping that you can hear me now. I also see some questions that are interesting and that we will get to later. Someone has asked about the Vista Campus, and I will show you how to get to the Vista Campus if the fundraising tools are there. But in the meantime, the next source of money comes from, three more. Funding, right. Know that approximately 25% of all U.S. nonprofit bills are paid for by government funding. Some very large grants available if you're a priority. There's difficulty, however, in acquiring those funds. Application and reporting requirements are very time-consuming and sometimes expensive when staff time is considered. Some organizations, which rely heavily on government funds, find themselves in trouble when they are no longer in a targeted priority area for funds. Fed organizations. These organizations, such as the United Way, Associated Black Charities, they're often a good source of supplemental funding. You have other sources. The giving program makes it easy for people to give, but seldom are there large gifts that are received this way. Receive grants
directly from a federated organization. Like have civic organizations and clubs, Lions Club, the sometimes known as the Animals, Rotary, religiously affiliated groups and fraternities and sororities often make small gifts. These are a fertile source for volunteers. Remember, one of the dangers of fundraising is reliance too heavily on any one single source. Currently, in this economic situation, this was pointed out when organizations lose funding from a major source. About fundraising methods, and you're hearing the beeps too. They seem to have stopped. Okay. The thing about raising money is that the closer and stronger the personal relationship, the greater the chance of getting the desired gift. Many times you will not be the one with this relationship. So let's turn to board members and fundraising volunteers, who can be a major benefit when asking for funds in this case. The one fundraising method is used for single prospective donors. You may letter to be followed up by a phone call to set an appointment for a personal visit to ask for a gift. And then just remember that the personal touch is always preferred because people give to people. About the benefits and how to use some of the fundraising methods. Personal visits. And personal visits are the top producers. If you have a large base of donors, though, it's highly unlikely that you'll be able to make personal visits to everyone. Best for seeking larger or special gifts. It can be for annual unrestricted support or restricted support, but save it for your best prospects. It is also to bring positive results when the solicitor is a peer or a fundraising volunteer who has made a donation of comparable size. So those asked usually give about 50% of the requested amount in a visit. Very personal. This is often used to initiate a personal contact as a prelude to face-to-face asks for unrestricted or restricted support. Phone used to supplement annual fund drives and upgrade support. Private callers to people they know. 20% of those asked usually will give about 25% of the requested amount. Per mail. Mail can be used when you are soliciting new or repeat gifts. It's best when you include the person's name on the letter. It is often applied to annual fund campaigns and is usually in 10% of the people asked will usually give about 2.5% of the suggested amount if a donor. Established donors will respond at a higher rate. When a mail campaign is initiated, that's one that it's not contain a donor's name. Response will be much smaller. The targeted the mailing, the better chance you have of a positive response. With written grant proposals, these go to foundations or corporations, and sometimes even to individuals. If you are involved in a major capital campaign, you may be asked to write a proposal to an individual to fund a specific program or project. Grants usually come with specific guidelines. If you have the guidelines before you start your proposal, and if necessary, contact the funder for guidance if there are questions. Foundation staff usually are receptive to calls from grant seekers during the proposal writing process or involved in special events. In fundraising, special events can serve to showcase and publicize your project to the wider community. They also involve many volunteers and may be a way to involve the business community in a form of gifts in kind. These will become funders later when they learn more about your program through their involvement. Be aware of your return on investment. You should be spending more on your event than you are bringing in revenue. By serving you well.
source for new donors and has been proven to be a very effective way to raise funds during a crisis. As you need to have a Donate Now button prominently displayed on your website. Make use of Facebook, Twitter, and other social media tools that bring awareness to your cause and to your needs. And don't forget to use standard email. To a special purpose like endowments. And requests, they can include gifts of personal property such as stock or real estate. They're for a long time major donors to provide for your organization. Sometimes they're known as the ultimate gift from a long-time donor. And last, we have tributes and memorials. These are usually not put into a fundraising plan because one never sure just when you're going to get a tribute or memorial. They are often directed by a long-term funder who is asking friends to make a gift as a tribute, or sometimes they're done as a memorial for someone who has died. Now ask. This slide, the 5 I's of development, explains the process of relationship building, and relationship building is one of the most important tenets of fundraising and development. Remember, people give to people. So the step is identify. So you need to identify the prospects who might support your program. Maybe people come to events, or they have family members or friends involved in your project. They may have made gifts before and other ways. Do find out about a prospect's capabilities and interests. Need to interest do by doing your work in a way that those prospects will notice and be interested, such as publicizing the community or hold events that allow individuals to see the kind of work that you're doing. Send letters, generate publicity, send out press releases, post to Facebook, hold special events to inform your prospects about the need in the community that your program is meeting. A special opportunity to invite a prospect to your program so that that person can see the work that you're doing. Now, the more prospect is involved in your program, the more they care. Ask for advice. Request help on short-term projects. Using this process, you'll be able to get the money that you ask for. The will invest in your program. Investing is the final step in which they make a gift. Money scares a lot of people, but it might be helpful to keep these thoughts in mind. Money, unless they are asked. When was the time you went looking for a place to give my money away? Feels good when they give money. There's a small impression that you have made the world, or at least someone's world, a better place to live when you make a gift. People of incomes of less than $60,000. Don't only ask rich folks for money. In fact, those with fewer assets and less income give a percentage of their income. Also, the rise of online and web-based giving is coming from younger donors who have the potential to become larger donors if you capture their interest. Ask people no for a contribution. At least some of them will say yes. That it's important to build relationships. We're totally on that talking about religion, politics, sex, and money are taboo. We're the belief that it's rude to ask someone what their salary is or how much they paid for their house or their car. However, we're not prying to find out how much money a person has, how much money they came by their money. We're after a specific gift of a certain size for a specific purpose. I'd like to introduce Jill Freeman from Edge Northwest. Jill is going to, I'm sorry. When you ask people, sorry, that didn't get revealed. So I'm going to introduce Jill Freeman, who is an advisor and training online curriculum developer at Edge Northwest in Portland, Oregon. And she's going to give us some points on communicating with donors. Jill, are you there?
I am, Sharon. So in talking about asking donors money, we need to consider also how we communicate with them. I'd like to talk to you about 7 key points in forming communication with any sort of donor, whether that be a donor you're asking in person, a donor you're asking over email, through a letter, or a pitch at a fundraising event. It's important that your solicitations are strong and compelling, and that they appeal to the interest of the donors. So knowing who your donors are is important as part of this process. And that goes back to what Sharon was talking about earlier with making relationships with people. The process of solicitation is story. You want to make sure you're engaging your reader by presenting a compelling narrative portrait of the problem or need of the organization. It's much more effective to let them know who is being helped by your organization and how you're making an impact through a narrative than giving them dry and boring statistics. A story is something that tugs at heartstrings, and that will help people in feeling motivated to donate to your organization and cause, whether that be financial or through donations of time or any other resources that you might possibly need. The next that you want to consider is shared values. And back, like I said, to that relationship aspect. Make sure that you're appealing to the values and motivations of the donors. That includes things possibly like being part of a solution or being part of something that's larger than themselves, making a visible, measurable impact. Someone's been affected by something that your organization deals with in their personal life might feel very motivated, and making sure that you're appealing to that in a way that's very earnest and sincere is important. Solutions. When you're talking to a donor, again, in writing or in person, you're providing a description of the need that establishes a logical solution to the problem and the groundwork for the ask. And to show how your organization's work, and extension, those supporters of that work, essential part of the solution at hand. Show you're effective and show how you're solving problems. Now, you want to deal with what we call the so what questions. Important in communication in general. It's about the impact. You discuss the problem in a way that makes the reader or a person you're talking to in person see that change must happen as soon as possible. You want to discuss what happens when solutions aren't offered or supported, and what happens when solutions are offered. Finally, when appropriate, you want to use experts to help make the case. You want to tell somebody why they should care about this issue and why their contribution will help improve the situation around it. And make a specific ask. You want to make a strong and direct ask of the donor, which includes clear directions for taking action. If you're doing this in writing, you want to provide links to websites. You want to make sure you're providing envelopes that people can send donations back to your organization in. Make it easy for people and tell them what you want them to do in a way that gives them a clear course of action that is easy and specific. You ensure that when you're asking someone to support your organization, you're keeping it simple and making it sincere. You want to be persuasive, but not overwhelm your reader with information. Language that is easy to understand and avoid the use of jargon or any terminology that's specific to your organization. Abbreviations, acronyms are really things you want to avoid. You want to make sure that you're practicing professional communication behaviors, like checking your spelling and your grammar. Make sure your language is appropriate and your tone of speech is indicative of your organization and the cause that you're representing. Not emotionally manipulating your audience. You want to be respectful and sincerely grateful for their time and support in whatever form it comes. That's the best way to respect the relationship that you've built and make sure that you're keeping honest to your cause and needs of your organization. Now to Sharon. Thank you for your time.
At this point, we're going to open the phone lines. Vanessa, can you open the phone lines for questions?
Yes, ma'am. This time, I would like to remind everyone, if you would like to ask a question, press *1 on your telephone keypad. We will pause for just a moment to compile the Q&A roster.
Someone asked about what to do if a business says no soliciting on their grounds. We want to make it clear that when you're fundraising, you don't start with the ask for the gift. You develop a relationship first. So you use the 5 I's and develop your relationship so that you know people within the corporation and they can provide an entree for you, then you shouldn't have a problem with soliciting a business.
While we're waiting for the phone lines, we also had another question in the chat, Sharon, that maybe you or Jill could answer. And her question is, if you have certain organizations and local prospects, what's a good way to develop new relationships?
That's your volunteers. Give to people, and especially people that they know. They don't give to organizations. Your board of directors or perhaps a separate fundraising committee should be out there making connections for you, and they should be the ones who are introducing you to these potential funders, individuals, corporations, and foundations in the community.
I had a question about Jill. Jill, could you just say your full name again and your title and where you're located?
I'm Jill Freeman, and I am a training and curriculum developer for Education Northwest. I'm also the facilitator of the online Vista Blend Resource Development course. And just add really quickly to Sharon's last answer, I think the other thing is in terms of making those relationships, volunteers are great, board members are great, but you really want to identify where the relationships could possibly be. So I think doing a brainstorm session and something called a prospect map can be useful. And that's where you just get a key group of people together in a room, get some pieces of paper, and literally draw a map of your organization where you start with your organization in the center and then link out to relationships that exist in the room. So asking board members, volunteer, key staff, who are folks that share a mission with us, share values with us, clients, or share an interest or a need to participate in our organization. What motivations and what are the resources that they have? If you start to build that kind of map, you'll begin to see those connections really clearly, and then you can follow the 5 I's and start to develop those relationships from there.
And we have a question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I see that there's a question about a prospect map model. There is, if you Google prospect map and a gentleman named Craig Bowman, B-O-W-M-A-N, you'll find it. And I think actually it's also something that eventually will end up on the campus.
A little earlier on, someone in the chat asked, how to develop a relationship with the foundation or corporation that is out of state?
Yes, about that. And those are usually funders. I assume that you are aware of what they fund, so you've done some research on the prospect ahead of time. You perhaps have gone to the Foundation Center online or one of the Foundation Center books, and if you don't have a subscription to the Foundation Center, you can check out one of the libraries that hold the materials. They're located in every state, and if you look at the Foundation Center's website, they will tell you where these libraries are located. And in those materials, you will find out how to make a contact. Of course, they know that they don't know you personally, but they may ask, for instance, for some materials before you submit a proposal, something about your mission and about your what you're going to be asking for money for. And their guidelines will usually tell you whether or not you're a good prospect for that foundation. People who are using volunteers, and I'm very pleased to see that.
So, Jill or Sharon, if you have any software, someone asked the question, Erica wants to know what is the best software program for donors?
Oh, good. There are many, many of them, and they range in price from very inexpensive to quite sophisticated and expensive. Any of the Blackbaud project software systems are probably at the top of the line and will be out of the budget for smaller organizations. But TechSoup, which is a partner with the corporation, does provide some assistance in find appropriate software for your fundraising. People have used eTapestry. That's a good one. Any number of I can't endorse any one in particular, but should be the starting point if you're starting from zero. Don't have any idea what you need to use for software. Any questions?
Yes, ma'am, we do. Your first question comes from the line of Mona Phillips.
Mona?
Yes, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you much for getting with us, and we really appreciate this information that you're giving us. One of my big concerns is we are, a big portion of our community-based area, and we do have a lot of programs in general, but you want to key in on, certain grants and certain communities. What had asked before, what's, another good tool? Because I feel sometimes when you try to go to certain big businesses and certain bigger organizations, you have to keep in mind that there are other areas and other organizations that are going to be going to them as well. So, what better way to connect with some even smaller, not so hurt organizations that could be in state or out of state?
The competition is very tough, and that's all I can really say about it. The best way to get an inside track on donations from local businesses is from local volunteers, your fundraising committee. Put people on your fundraising committee. Remember I said something about asking for advice was a good way to involve people? Well, if you know that a company is a funder in the community but has not funded you, look for someone in that community and invite them to participate in your organization in some way. People who are involved are much more apt to be advocates for your program.
Thank you. Appreciate it, because that's something I try to strive myself to do, is not just stick to the same, because you don't want to, make it look like you're just consistently using them as your only resource.
No, they don't want to be the only resource.
So I'm always trying to, in my mind, go to places and people I know may not have been, talked to, or like you said, making those personal, because sometimes it just be that one person or that one group of people that actually can spread your name. And I wanted to say earlier when typing in, it's important, like you said, to make those networks, because sometimes face-to-face, that friend can spread your name just as well as if you were, talking or doing it online. So I really appreciate that, and everyone saying that, because for here and the years that I've, been doing, type of activity, it is, sometimes, looking outside the box.
Right.
Because more and more, organizations in our programs are needing assistance and needing help. So like you said, sometimes people feel like just because you haven't even asked, is a way. And sometimes you have to just kind of get out of your own comfort zone. And like you said, really do some digging.
Right. Keep your eyes open. See who's fund other organizations that are doing like work too.
Oh, thank you so much. General, I wanted to say quickly, another thing that I see is when you're writing on a lot of some of the federal and governmental grants, I know a lot out there to look for, but when you're trying to narrow it down, are you wanting to just focus on, the ones that, hard hit your area, or is it by your state? Or because I know some that I've seen, they break off based off, where you're located or your region, or just by the needs assessment, for your organization, or on those lines. Is it, more or less that they're going to be focusing on those particular issues, on the specifics, or is there more some that kind of general that it doesn't necessarily matter where you are, what your relations to other, networks are, but they actually want to just help, a wide spread?
It's hard to find those. You look for general support in your, if you use Foundation Center, for instance, but mainly foundations and corporations are very purposeful about their targeted support so they can have an impact.
Right, that's what I thought, which is what I think, especially if you're trying to get other governmental, they want, to know specifically location area. So should we check, more in, like you said, our state area or our commerce and things of that nature, or do we need to kind of go further?
Well, you got to start local and broaden out.
Okay. Any, like I said, ways that you feel like I said, that it's once we bring out that are good resources to use outside of just Foundation Center?
That would be the best one.
Foundation.
Yes. Also, Grant Station, I believe, that you have access to.
Okay.
That's for grants. Thank you. Vanessa, have any other questions?
Ma'am, your next question comes from the line of Sarah Benavides.
Hello, sir.
Hi. My question is, I am trying to create an annual appeal letter.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to get more information on how to, I guess, the best practices for creating an appeal letter. And
okay, I can tell you right now that as soon as the questions are over, we are going to go to the Vista campus, and I will show you there where you can get information on how to draft an annual appeal.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Again, to ask a question, press star 1 on your telephone keypad. Your next question comes from the line of Raquelis Stallone.
Hello, Madeline.
Hello.
Yes, I do.
Okay. The question is, can I ask for a specific quantity of money for donations or grants?
Yes, absolutely. The more specific you can be, the more likely you are to get success. I want to know exactly what their money is going for.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask a question. Press star 1 on your telephone keypad. Your next question comes from the line of Lo Ching.
Lola. And I think we will have to make this the last question we take over the phone because we're getting on in time. And other questions, if you could put into the chat, and we will try to answer them. And what I will do is I will email out the chat to everyone with the other material, the PowerPoint, when we're through. Okay.
Ms. Ching, will you unmute your phone line? There's no response from Ms. Ching's line. We can move on to the next person in queue.
We can take more.
All right, ma'am. Your next question comes from the line of Carol Basinski.
Very good. You got my last name right. My question is, how do you ensure that your public service announcement is actually going to be followed through and you're going to be able to see it, or you'll be able to see it appear on TV as promised and scheduled?
That's my question for Jill. Jill, are you there?
I am. The television stations, radio stations actually have a certain number of those hours that they have to give as a requirement by law, and they have to keep logs. So if you have scheduled it with a specific radio station or television station, you can actually go down to that television station and ask to see their FCC, the Federal Communications Log, and it should be marked in there. Now, many organizations don't keep those logs, which is actually a violation of FCC policy, so you have some ground to request that they let you know when that has been played. The other thing I would say about that is making sure that you understand the guidelines that they set up for that sort of airing, whether or not they guarantee you a spot or if they just guarantee that they play public service announcements. So whether it's specifically guaranteed to an organization or just a pile of announcements will really impact that as well. So make sure you understand the variation to you before you go in and accusing them of things.
No, I mean, I've had the issue that I
appear to be breaking up. Hello? Hello?
I think we lost her.
Oh, dear. Well, at the time, to ask questions in the chat, if you will. And Vanessa, I think we will end the phone chat for now so that we can continue with the webinar, and we're going to go to the Vista campus.
Sure, doing that, can I just add something really quickly from a couple questions I saw in the chat?
Sure.
A couple people were asking, do you think it's rude or do you think it's appropriate to ask people for money? And Sharon made some comments about this earlier. I just want to say really quickly that it's a mind shift that you have to make. And I know personally it's been a mind shift for me as well. But really thinking about it, instead of asking people to give something and that's a burden, as you're presenting people with an opportunity to support something and be part of a solution. So if you can kind of start to move in that mentality, position yourself around that thought, I think it will really help open up this world for you. So I just wanted to say that.
Very well. Yes, very well. It is not rude. It is helping people make the world a better place to live.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, this time we're going to go right to the Vista campus, and I'm sharing my desktop with you so that I can show you some tools that you can use for fundraising. Someone asked about tools that they could use or if they could find some help. And these will be found in the work section of the campus, and especially, of course, in the fundraising box. And if you haven't looked at the fundraising box before, you will see that there are 4 sub-boxes: raising funds from individuals, writing and proposals, events, and the online course for college credit. We're going to look at the first 3. Funds from individuals. We said that individuals give 70 to 80% of the money, so that every organization should have some support from individuals. And talking about writing individuals writing to individuals has a course. And this course, through a series of activities and information, loading, and have a pre-assessment which tells you, at the beginning. You have a pre-assessment which gets at how much you already know. And you have some information on the elements of an individual appeal. There is a whole package. It's not just a letter. There's an envelope. There's the letter itself. There's reply devices. There are a number of different pieces of an individual appeal. So timing when to write. And by the way, you just work through this course. Time right is important. There are certain times that get more responses than others. People are used to the early fall, winter, early winter appeal that comes before the end of the tax year. When you're talking about individual appeals, too, don't forget that you shouldn't be always asking for money. Send out information on your organization on a regular basis. But if there's a time when you are in a crunch, something has happened, extra pull is a good place. And who to write? The audience. It talks about segmenting your mailing. There are different ways to send letters to different people. Some people will get a very personalized note, perhaps from the executive director. Others will get notes from raising volunteers, perhaps, and then still some others will get the standard letter. So how you want to segment your mailing so that it goes to different groups of people. This is the appeal that we talked about and how to write the letter. And there are some information on the 5 points, and then you saw just 7 S's. An example of a letter, and it shows you some of the that you might definitely want to include, such as a personalized first line. Dear friend isn't very personal, and there are some things that you this have used that would have improved it, but didn't, and you might. Keep in mind that a PS, for instance, is a good thing to include a letter. Sometimes people read the PS before they even read the letter. Also, don't forget the thank you letter as part of your appeal, because if you don't send a thank you letter, you can be pretty sure you won't get another gift. That will be last. This is the course on individuals writing to individuals.
we own the for individuals, building fundraising volunteer champions. And this is a 6-step process that you can work through to help you employ volunteers in your fundraising effort. And in the questions that somebody said, what if your executive director won't allow volunteers? Your executive director needs to be persuaded otherwise. So the 6 steps of a fundraising volunteer champion is very important. Okay, and next we have a little called the Power of Direct Mail, and it's a little interactive thing that tells you again about the different aspects of a direct mail package, and it's kind of just a fun way of looking at how you can beef up your citation appeal. I don't want to say letters because it's more than a package, so that it's more effective. And it goes about, for instance, ways to talk up the envelope. Take a minute here to get going. Here. And so some ways you can make that your letter gets open, for instance. And then it goes through other aspects of the direct mail package.
And Sharon's moving on to the next one. I just wanted to point out to everyone that you can continue going with chat. So at the very top of your screen, you can go up to the very top. I think Sharon's showing you now, and you can pull down that menu up at the top, and then you can keep this chat going. I see that there's some questions going back and forth, and you can continue to talk amongst yourselves and chat amongst yourselves, but she's giving you some really good information, so we also want you to pay attention to the campus as well. Thank you, Danielle. You're welcome.
Also forget volunteer funds, volunteer-led phonathons. This is a good way to involve volunteers in your fundraising. And planning a phonathon campaign is both a cultivation activity for volunteers who may become potential donors and a way to raise funds. So there's a tool that's available to you. And on every page in the forum, we have page of the campus, we have forums. And the You in the Work forum is the one to go to if you have questions about the work that you're doing, obviously. And don't forget to offer your advice, too. It's not just for asking questions. It's also for responding to questions. And there are other little tools in the bottom here. Remember, we talked about the sources of giving. That'll show up here, and you can take another look at it in a brighter, more colorful version and know where to go back to it again and again. The next thing I want to go to in the raising funds from individuals. There. Okay, grants and proposals. And talk about writing grants. And no matter what you do, at some point in your organization, you need to get to work, if you don't have one already, writing a case for support. A case for support is a well-documented effort to explain your organization's value to the community and what its needs are and why it is important for people to support your organization. An interactive tool that is fun to do can take about how much of it you do. It can take a couple of days if you build your own case of support through the question and answer template, which you can do, and then you pass it around for input from other people. So you can create a case for support using the materials right here on this site. Another tool on the writing some proposals is producing proposals that work. Again, the interactive flash course that will leave you, that will provide you with a completed proposal when you're finished. So making sure that you use the guidelines for who you're writing to, but you have templates that you can download and use note sheets and feedback so that you can write a proposal right in this site. Additional kind of proposal writing course that takes you through the proposal writing step-by-step process. The one that's like the courses in that it starts with a pre-assessment and a number of steps to work through. And it, too, talks about such things as how to do writing, how to find the support, use case for support in proposal writing. With corporations and businesses, there are a number of different ways that you can approach them, and that's information that you need to know. Okay. This part is planning events. Every year, or not everyone, but many vistas are involved in planning events, and these are volunteer-heavy activities. So again, we place the building volunteer champions here along a couple of other places. This tool, Success Everything Events, is like the other interactive courses that completed product at the end. Download everything. When you're through, you will have a plan that will give you some action steps and sources for planning a special event. Those there from the PSO that you probably already have, but this is warehoused again if you're interested, and some other tools that are helpful to you. Okay, on the fundraising section, you might have some tools in communications and marketing. These are divided up into a number of different areas, improving personal communications, mainly, and some are from the PSO. Stakeholders is important since your funders are your stakeholders. I'll point out on this communication and marketing page the social media section. Actually, the Social Media Monday pages have another webinar coming up on August 6th. It's going to actually be on tools, using tools for connecting on social media. But the archives include a number of different topics that are useful for fundraisers, such as how to use Facebook, plan events using the social media tools, any number of tools that might be of useful to you. Also, section with volunteers, we have the volunteers for planning, recruiting, for years, and these will be helpful if you are bringing together a cadre of volunteers for your project. So this is about it for the fundraising. And on the campus, I am going to stop sharing my screen and pass the controls back. And so, for next steps for you, I ask you to do or invite you to do a number of things that we hope can be helpful to you. And bookmark the most important fundraising and resource development pages on the Vista campus. Some list about a course for fundraising or communications. There are a number of them, those short courses on the campus. So take one or two or more of those in the fundraising or the communications and marketing section. And post a message or respond to a question on the Vista forum, especially on the When You Work section if you need help with fundraising questions. Take a look at the calendar of events and future training opportunities. Evaluation that is going to appear any minute for you on there. It is on the right. If you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes to answer those questions, and we can do the next slide. Next. Thanks. So thank you for your participation. If you have questions, you can reach us through Vista Campus at campaignconsultation.com. We have the webinar coming up in August. Remember, I said these are part of a series of monthly webinars, and that one is going to be on working with volunteers, and it will appear on Wednesday, August 22nd at p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I will send out the PowerPoint, and I also will send out the chat, and I will probably edit it and clean it up a little bit and answer some of your questions on the chat. So look forward to that coming. It probably won't be this afternoon, but I will probably get it to you sometime tomorrow. If you want to look for other information for the tours, you can look on the of events that appears on the first page of the Vista campus. I really have enjoyed having you here. You've had some really good questions. It sounds like you're very good also at asking each other questions and answering them. Have a very good rest of the week, and we hope to see you in August.